England is absolutely jam-packed with football rivalries and clubs that just absolutely despise one another. But what about those rivals who just never get the opportunity to play against one another? In today's video, we're going to be having a look at 8 sets of football rivals who have barely played each other in the 21st century. If you're going to enjoy today's video, make sure to drop a like, and any others that you think of, drop them in the comments down below. Without any further ado though, let's jump in. And where better to start but with West Ham against Millwall, one of London's most infamous football rivalries, and yet two clubs who have rarely played each other in the modern era. This is a rivalry between two working class London clubs which goes back right to the start of the 1900s. It's a fixture which has been infamous with hooliganism throughout the 70s and 80s in the past. But since the year 2000, these two clubs have only faced each other on 7 occasions, with West Ham usually being in a higher division than Millwall. West Ham, a very established Premier League club, and Millwall, more known as a Championship club. Of the modern era, undoubtedly the most fierce fixture between these two was back in August 2009 during a League Cup clash at Upton Park. West Ham ended up winning that game 3-1, but it was a game that became infamous with the riots that took place. The game had to be stopped on several occasions because of disorder within the stands, and it was absolute chaos outside of the football stadium as well. Since that game in 2009, these two clubs have only faced each other on 2 occasions, and that's when West Ham were playing in the Championship back in 2011/12, and it's now been 13 years since these two clubs have played each other. Another derby we rarely see these days is the Bristol derby, competed between Bristol City and Bristol Rovers, two sides only separated by about 4 miles. But despite their close proximity and heated local rivalry, it's a fixture we've not seen since September 2013. That was a Johnson's Paint Trophy tie which Bristol City ended up winning 2-1, thanks to goals from J. Emmanuel Thomas and Joe Bryan, and the victory meant that much to Bristol City fans that there was a pitch invasion after the match. And the reason we never see this fixture is because the two clubs are never in the same league as one another. Over the last decade, we've seen Bristol City establishing themselves as a good, solid Championship club that's pushed onto playoff territory in recent years, whereas Bristol Rovers have spent the last decade fluctuating between League One and League Two, and with Bristol City currently sat 7th in the Championship and Bristol Rovers sat 16th in League One, it doesn't look like we're going to be getting another Bristol derby anytime soon. A fixture we see even less than the Bristol derby is the Nottingham derby between Notts County and Nottingham Forest. In the 21st century, these two clubs have only faced each other in one competitive fixture, despite their grounds only being about 270 metres apart from one another. The last time they did play in a competitive fixture, the game was an absolute cracker. It finished 3-3, it was a League Cup match, and Forest ended up winning it 4-3 on penalties. The last time these two played each other in a league fixture, you're going all the way back to February 1994. And because of that lack of football between these two clubs, it's a rivalry which has never really had the same animosity as some of the others on this list. Nottingham Forest, for example, would consider their main rivals to be Derby County. But even when the two clubs have played each other in friendly matches, which has become a little bit more common over the last 10 years or so, you still get a bit of trouble in the stands, and arrests have been quite frequent even when they have met in friendly matches. Definitely one of English football's most underrated rivalries is Stoke City against Port Vale, two clubs which are only separated by about 5 miles. And yet in a competitive fixture, these two clubs haven't faced each other since February 2002. Now it does have to be said that the sides technically did face off against each other in December 2018 during a Checkatrade Trophy match where Port Vale played Stoke City's under-21, and that game was absolute bedlam. Port Vale ended up winning it 4-0, but it was a game which became more known for the stuff and events that happened off the pitch. There were 11 arrests on the night, over 150 police officers working around that game, and unsurprisingly, because it had been such a long period since these two clubs last played each other, and even despite the fact it was only Stoke's under-21s who were playing, off the football pitch it looked like absolute bedlam. Port Vale have spent the last 10 or so seasons fluctuating between League 2 and League 1, whereas Stoke, since being relegated from the Premier League, have established themselves as a Championship club. So league-wise, these two clubs have never been that close to playing one another, but fingers crossed we get a cup meeting between them soon. Portsmouth against Southampton is a very heated football fixture, and one that we've seen a little bit more regularly than some of the others that we've discussed on today's video, but in the general context of football, these two sides haven't really played a lot of football against each other in the 21st century. Since the year 2000, they've only had 11 head-to-head fixtures against one another, but thankfully this season, they're in the same league as each other. We did see this fixture back in September. Unfortunately, on the football pitch, it was a little bit of an underwhelming game. Finished goalless. Before that fixture, they hadn't played each other in 6 years, so I think a lot of us were hyping that fixture up quite a bit, and in the end it was a little bit underwhelming. But with the reverse fixture to come at Fratton Park in January, I'm very much looking forward to that one. And it wouldn't be a Ben HD video without me mentioning Preston, but Preston North End against Blackpool is undoubtedly one of the most underrated rivalries in English football, and I think it's made even more special by the fact that we've not really played each other on that many occasions in modern history, meaning that whenever there is a clash between Preston and Blackpool, it's absolutely fireworks, and that's both on and off the football pitch. Since the year 2000, Preston and Blackpool have only faced each other on 12 occasions. Generally speaking, it has been North End in a higher league than Blackpool, which is why we've not really played each other that regularly, especially over the last decade or so. Although the last time Blackpool were in a higher league than Preston, and these two clubs faced each other in August 2013, it was a really heated battle. It was in the League Cup. North End ended up winning that game 1-0 thanks to a last-minute winner from Tom Clark. There was a pitch invasion by Preston fans after the match and a real outpour of emotions. Since that point, there have been 4 meetings between the two clubs when Blackpool were a championship club, and generally speaking in recent years, this has been a fixture which has favoured the home side. Blackpool have won their last 2 home matches against Preston. Preston have won their last 2 home matches against Blackpool. I don't think I've ever felt lower as a Preston fan as I did after we lost 4-2 against Blackpool back in October 2022. I just wanted to go into a hole and have it swallow me up. But on the opposite end of that, I've not had many more highs as a Preston fan than when we last beat Blackpool 3-1, and it was an absolute masterclass at Deepdale. So swings and roundabouts in that fixture. It's 2 very passionate fan bases. With how old both of the football clubs are as well, it's also one of the most historic rivalries in English football. You know, you're going back to the days where it was Stanley Matthews against Sir Tom Finney. A football fixture which is steeped in history, although it does have to be said, North End do have the superior head-to-head record. I'll just leave that one there. Another very underrated football rivalry between 2 clubs who hardly face each other is Watford against Luton. Since the year 2000, these 2 clubs have only faced each other on 9 occasions. It's usually been the case that Watford have been in a higher league than Luton, although obviously there was an exception to that recently when Luton were playing their football in the Premier League while Watford was still in the Championship. Generally speaking, this is a fixture which has favoured the home side. The last 6 head-to-head fixtures between Watford and Luton have been won by the team playing at home, but obviously with Luton being relegated to League One last season, these 2 clubs won't be facing each other this season unless they meet each other in a cup competition. A rivalry which doesn't really get spoken about much these days but was really heated in the 80s is Leeds United against Bradford. The 2 clubs haven't been in the same league as one another since 2001, and the last time they faced each other in a competitive fixture, you're going all the way back to 2014. But like I was saying, most of the heated and violent clashes between these sides really came in the 1980s. There was one particular clash that the 2 clubs had in 1986 which got really heated, involved a chip van being set on fire, stones being thrown, absolute chaos. But because of the gulf between these 2 clubs in their more recent histories, it's a rivalry which we've not really been able to see flourish. Despite the cities being in such close proximity to one another, they rarely play each other these days. But that will now wrap it up for today's video, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you can think of any other football rivals who have barely played each other in modern history, then do get your suggestions in the comments down below. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.